In this video, I'll show you what carbs actually are, how they literally make us older both on the inside and the outside, and finally, I'll share one way to dramatically mitigate these negative effects without giving up the carbs that we love so much. Hi, my name is Stefano, founder of Transparency Foods. I have created 3 monk fruit sweetener products used by over 100,000 people, and I also happen to have a long history of diabetes in my family, which is why this topic is very close to my heart. Click the like button, subscribe, and let's get right into it. To understand how carbs affect us, we need to zoom out a little bit and ask ourselves, what are carbohydrates in the first place? In short, they're just a bunch of little sugar molecules put together. That's it. These sugar molecules are called monosaccharides. Mono means one and saccharide means sugar molecule. The most relevant monosaccharides in biology are glucose, galactose, and fructose. And these monosaccharides, as I said before, combine to form more complex carbohydrates. For example, a simple one is sugar. The regular table sugar we're all familiar with is a disaccharide, which means it's made up of 2 monosaccharides bonded together, 1 molecule of glucose and 1 molecule of fructose. They can also combine to form more complex structures called starches, like a potato, for example. And they can also combine to form fiber, which is very different. It's a very different type of carb, but we'll talk more about that later. Now, this may seem like a lot, but the only thing that I want you to remember is that carbohydrates are literally just a bunch of sugar molecules bonded together. That's it. Now, the next question you probably have is, what happens when we eat carbs? And that's a great question. And in short, we break them back down, right? So we break down this potato, for example, down into its individual parts, into its sugar molecules, mainly glucose. This is the thing. Glucose is the most important sugar molecule, and this is because it's the preferred energy source of our body. It is the fuel that allows us to move, think, dance, talk to our friends, do all the things that we love to do. We absolutely need glucose to live, not carbs, glucose. And that's why whenever we eat carbs, which are rich in glucose, our body works very, very hard to break them down into glucose as quickly as possible. This glucose is absorbed into the bloodstream, and if our body doesn't need that energy right away, it stores it as fat for later. Our bodies are constantly regulating our blood glucose levels. If they drop too low, our bodies release glucagon, which is a hormone that triggers different processes to make more glucose, ensuring we always have enough fuel. On the other hand, if glucose levels get too high, like right after eating cake, for example, or just a lot of rice, our body releases insulin to help bring those glucose levels back down. This is why our blood glucose levels fluctuate throughout the day, and that's completely normal. Now, if carbs are made largely out of glucose, and glucose is so important, how is it that carbs make us older? Let's answer that. The problem starts when we end up with more glucose in our blood than we can manage. If you have a big bowl of cereal for breakfast, for example, your blood sugar levels will go up a lot. And for a period of time, your body will have more glucose than it can burn. This creates a series of problems, and one of those is that it increases the rate at which glucose glycates our cells. Now, let me explain what that means. Glycation is when sugar sticks to our cells in an unhealthy way. This creates harmful compounds called AGEs that build up over time and damage our cells, speeding up aging and disease. Let me paint a better picture of how this works. Imagine a healthy red blood cell floating in your bloodstream. It is flexible, soft, and smooth. It needs to be, because it travels through tiny capillaries to deliver oxygen. Now imagine that very cell surrounded by excessive glucose. The sugar starts sticking to its outer membrane like honey coating a marble. That sticky sugar binds to the proteins on the cell's surface in a way that is irreversible. Once that bond forms, it's like that red blood cell is now wearing a sugary crust forever. There's no way to undo it. And from that point onwards, that cell will not function properly. Now, as a quick side note, Have you heard of the A1C test? It is a very common clinical marker to measure average blood sugar levels. And if you are diabetic, you're probably familiar with it. Well, the reason I bring it up is that this test relies on glycation to work. It measures the percentage of red blood cells that have become glycated by glucose. Since red blood cells live for about 3 months, this test serves as a strong proxy to our average sugar levels over that time. The higher our A1C, the more glycation has occurred, and as a result, the higher our blood glucose levels were over the previous 3 months. All right, let's come back to the red blood cell covered in sugar. Why is this harmful? Well, glycation makes red blood cells stiffer and less flexible. That means that they don't travel as well through narrow blood vessels, which can reduce oxygen delivery throughout our body. And over time, this contributes to poor circulation, especially in areas like our fingers, toes, and eyes. Now, red blood cells are not the only ones affected. Glycation can happen to nerve cells, eye cells, kidney cells, and even skin cells, causing premature aging and wrinkles. So when our blood sugar stays high, glycation doesn't just affect one part of our body. It quietly impacts our entire system, and the damage adds up over time. Also, glycation triggers defense responses in our body. Our immune system sees these glycated cells as abnormal and react by releasing inflammatory molecules and free radicals. These then in turn create oxidative stress, and this oxidative stress then accelerates glycation. Oxidative stress then damages cells and make them more vulnerable to being glycated, accelerating glycation as a result. This creates a loop. More glycation leads to more oxidative stress, and more oxidative stress leads to more glycation. Also, if you have no idea what I just said, it's okay. I made a whole video on oxidative stress alone, so make sure to check that out if you want to learn more. Oxidative stress is as important to understand as glycation, in my opinion. At this point, you're probably asking yourself, all right, Stefano, what can I do to stop glycation? Well, the truth is that there's no way to completely avoid glycation. It's just a natural part of aging, but we can slow it down significantly. And one of the most powerful ways to do that is by managing our blood sugar levels. The less sugar molecules we have in our blood, the less likely it is for them to glycate our cells. A great way to start is to simply remove carbs from our breakfast. That's it. I usually have 4 eggs and a little bit of feta cheese, tomato, and avocado on the side. This allows my body to maintain a relatively steady glucose level all the way until lunch. I have said this before, but aside from all the long-term benefits of having one less massive glucose spike a day, which is what most Americans have after eating, cereal, bagels, or just a lot of orange juice for breakfast, I also get a lot of short-term benefits from not eating that and not having that massive glucose spike. More specifically, I feel more centered. I don't get cravings or anxiety, and I'm able to focus more for longer. Now, if you don't want to do that, there's also something else that you can do, and it has to do with fiber. Fiber is a type of carbohydrate that our body cannot break down. They are still made out of sugar molecules linked together, but they're structured in a way that we cannot digest. So they literally just pass through our digestive system unchanged. That's what makes fiber different from other carbohydrates, and is the very reason why it's such a powerful tool to help us regulate our blood sugar levels. This is because fiber slows down the rate at which our body absorbs whatever carbs we eat next. In other words, we can lower our blood sugar spikes and therefore the rate at which our cells glycate by consuming fiber before the rest of our meals. If you want to learn more about this, make sure to watch this video.